Hi there, Andre here from Peak Motorcycles. In this video I'm going to be looking at something that I've done before but not quite in this way, and certainly something I haven't looked at for a while. So in this video I'm going to be looking at another rack for my CRF300 Rally. So far I've tried the Honda OEM rack because that was all that was available when the bike came out. I've also tried the Yamoto rack that I got from Thailand. I've tried the Rally Raid rack as well, which was, that was pretty good. And I've also tried the H2C rack, which also came from Thailand. Now I think each of them has got their own strengths. I think the Rally Raid is the best looking, but for what I need it for, which is generally when I'm taking more than this, it's just too small and it doesn't work as well with my Blizzard Panniers as I would like. I think probably the best one I've tried overall for my purposes is the Yamoto one, which was quite thin, aluminium, quite a big platform, just fitted the bike. And it was fairly cheap. Most of the time lately I've actually been using these Enduristan XS Base Packs. I've got one that's a 6.5 litre and one that's a 12 litre, and they're actually just on clips which are bolted to the rear plastic, so it saves all the weight associated with the rack altogether. However, they're not quite big enough if I'm doing a big trip away. There's a certain amount I can carry in my panniers, but I do need to put some more on the back. And though I could go back to the Yamoto rack, I'm also looking at other options that are out there. So in this video, I'm going to be looking at this, and this is just one part of it, but I'll show you the rest in a moment. So this is the Adventure Spec rack. Now, this to me seems like perhaps the best of all worlds that I've come across so far. It is kind of shaped to fit the back of the bike, but it's got quite a big platform, bigger than the Rally Raid platform. It is quite big and flat. It is made of alloy, but it's quite thick alloy. I'd like to think that's quite strong, but only time will tell. Anyway, I'll give you a close-up look and I'll go through exactly what you get with the kit, and then I will fit it to the bike. That should be it. I think the next videos will probably be with some big bag strapped to it, seeing how I'm getting along. To give you a close-up look, this is how it comes. Now it's powder coated, I believe it's aluminium. I think it might be 4mm perhaps. I'm sure someone will correct me if that's wrong. It's got some side loops which have got nicely shaped corners on the inside so it doesn't wear too much. So two there, and then two outer ones, and also two here. So if you've got a bag crossways, I guess you could loop over that way. If you've got something the other way, you could loop over the other way. And yeah, it is just that extra size that I think is quite appealing. To give you a rough idea, between those two loops side to side, that's about 13 inches, maybe just over at the longest point, which is about 34 centimetres. Down here at the narrowest point, it's about 8.5 inches or 21 centimetres front to back, and I'm measuring middle to middle here, it's about 22 centimetres. Now in terms of fitting it to the bike, it's really straightforward, but what they have done, which I know not everyone does, because I guess some people think it's kind of obvious, is to include some instructions. They're not very complicated, but then it isn't very complicated. But what it does make sure is that you put all the spaces in the right place, you put all the washers in the right place, you make sure you've got your lock nuts and everything the right way around on here. There's also a parts list that shows you exactly what's in there, how many you should have, what size they are, which, is kind of good to know. It's all pretty straightforward. It's just printed on one piece of paper, but I know that some manufacturers prefer having an install video that you have to look up and then look on a small screen, and sometimes it's just nice to have these things in front of you. Anyway, that is basically it. It's these two side panels, which any of you who fitted a rack before to one of these bikes will know that they basically bolt on just through the existing mounting points on the bike, and then that just fits, bolts underneath there like that. So yeah, dead straightforward. What I'm going to do is I will assemble it here on the bench, which is just to basically put those two pieces on, and then I'll go and fit it to the bike. I'm not going to talk through this, I'm just going to do it quickly. So there you go, so that's all those bits on. I mean, that's really simple. The way the instructions actually go is you do this bit second after you've assembled the other bits, but I'm not quite sure how easy it is to get to these once it's on the bike. So I know I've done that the wrong way around before somebody reminds me. What I might try do now is actually just to test fit it to the bike as it is. Just while it's here, I'll show you, so I don't have to show you when I'm up there. The way that these go on is bolt goes through, washer goes through, and then it goes through the holes, and then it's the big spaces at the front, small spaces at the back. That's kind of it. Now I know this is something that some people love and some people hate, but before I put it on the bike I will just weigh it with all the hardware that's going on, just so you know, so this is the rack with the bolts and the side plates. It's just over a kilo, 1,077. If I add on all of these pieces as well, there we go, 1,227 grams. Bear in mind, these bolts do replace the ones that are actually on the bike, so it's slightly less, but call it 1.2 kilos. And just for a comparison, the Rally Raid rack is about 950 grams. So it is another 250 grams heavier than the Rally Raid rack. However, the Rally Raid rack is roughly this sort of size. So I found for what I need it for carrying bigger bags on my CRF300 Rally, I felt that the Rally Raid rack was a little bit small for that. I think for day packs and things like that, I think it's perfect. Though in the case of that, for me, I just tend to bolt them straight on, so I save another kilo there. So yeah, about 1.2 kilos. For those of you that do pounds and ounces, I guess that's roughly just under 3 pounds, something like that, 2.5-ish. I'm sure someone will tell me. Anyway, that's everything I think over here. I will now go and fit it to the bike. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take off my Enduristan XS Base Pack, which has kind of been my trail riding, put everything in bag. Now for now, I'm actually just going to leave these on here. They might be useful when the rack is on. I guess we'll see how much clearance there is underneath, but maybe those would be useful. I've actually bolted these through. I do have a spare plastic that doesn't have those on, but for now, I'll just leave them where they are. If you've seen any of my other videos, you'll kind of know how this bit goes. I'm basically just going to take all of these off. These loops that I have on the back here, those are actually there to secure my Blizzard Panniers when I didn't have a rack on here. So yeah, they were just little loops that just go onto those bolts. I am going to take those off together with the stock bolts. I'm also going to take off my Moose racing strap. Now, if any of these can go back on, because it makes sense to do so, then clearly I'll put them back on once when I put the rack bolts on. But for now, I'm just going to kind of assume that everything is going to attach to the rack, so these can all go. One thing other to point out is that these come off with a 6mm hex, and it's exactly the same size for the bolts that go on, which is quite nice. When you get different sizes, it's just another tool to carry if it's not something that's already on the bike. I've done this loads of times before, so I'll just do it quickly. This is just a little thing, but I don't know if you can see that on there, but just the edges have been taken off those spaces. I know that's a tiny thing, doesn't really matter, but the inside and outside edges, it's just a nice touch. You know, it'd be easy just to get a bit of that and just to cut it off sharply. But yeah, it's the little things that you can tell that something's been, you know, thoughtfully put together. So this is to go on. So this is actually one of the long bolts with a washer and one of the big spacers that goes on at the front. There's also these little alloy pieces that came with the bike, so you need to keep those just to keep the spacer there. So it's essentially going to go like that and through there with the bit of the rack through there. Rear one's very similar. Bolt goes through, and then the black spacer is already on the bike at the back for me. Okay, so that's that on. Now I'm just going to tighten up all of these. In a way, I think I'm glad I did it that way around, because trying to get the washers and the nuts on the underside of that probably be a little less convenient. But yeah, the side bits are on nice and firm, so I shall just get a wrench to do those. Yeah, to do these up, it's a 4mm hex and a 10mm wrench underneath. So there we go, that is on. So there we go, for now at least I'm going to leave these straps on. I'm guessing that if I was going to actually just put a bigger bag on where I needed bigger straps, I was going to use this or that, I'd probably take those off, just put my plain plastic back underneath. But I think for now, I'm actually quite chuffed with that. I think of all the racks that I've tried, this is the best compromise between looks and practicality and weight. So I think that this is now going to be my rack that I leave on my bike all the time. So that's it. That's my video on how to fit the Adventure Spec rack for the Honda CRF300L and Rally to my CRF300 Rally. Both bikes are exactly the same from here backwards, so the fitting process is exactly the same. As I said, for what I want it for, I think this is actually the best rack that I've tried so far. So I have tried the Honda OEM rack because that was the only one available when the bike came out. I've also tried the Yamoto rack, which I got from Thailand. Tried the H2C rack from Thailand, and also the Rally Raid rack. So first of all, they all work. You know, it's essentially a piece of metal on the back of the bike to put stuff on. So yeah, they all do what's needed. I think beyond that, it's really practicality for what you want it for. I think for me, this is the best compromise between the size of the plate, how it looks on the bike, how much it weighs, and for what I want it for, it's basically to be able to put a bigger holdall on the back of here when I'm using it with my Blizzard Panniers. So that's it, not a lot to say really. I'll put a link to where you can find these in the description for the video, and I hope this has been interesting and useful. If it has, maybe I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.